Has a doctor ever misdiagnosed you? If so, how did it affect you? In my high school, my history teacher was misdiagnosed with cancer. I saw her go from depression to acceptance to anger in a span of 6 months. After she found out, I remember her asking the class if any of our parents were lawyers. I felt really bad for her. She was already thinking how to say goodbye to her 7-year-old. Not quite the same, but similar happened to me, only for a short time. I was at the ER coughing with pain, etc. I had x-rays done and my husband and I were waiting for the results. A doctor came in and told us he had bad news and that I had cancer. We were shocked and I started to cry. He looked at my name tag and said he'd be back. 10 minutes later, another doctor came in to tell me I had pneumonia and they would start treatment straight away. We asked about the cancer, but she didn't have any idea what we were talking about. Probably the only time I've been happy to have pneumonia. Our neighbor across the road had the reverse happen. The doctors kept telling her there was nothing wrong with her. By the time they finally diagnosed her breast cancer, it was too late. She was dead within a few months at 28, leaving a husband and 4 young children. I guess this is why hypochondriacs exist. When I was 14, I was told I was pregnant after getting an ultrasound to check my kidneys due to high blood pressure. No pregnancy test, no questions. I was a young girl, so I obviously was pregnant after they found an abnormal mass. Ended up being a cyst. None of the doctors would listen to me when I said that I had never even kissed a boy before. The sad part of the story was that after the doctor told my dad and me that I was 10 weeks pregnant, I adamantly denied that it was even possible. My dad actually stood up for me and took my side. The doctors then called my mom and accused my father of sexually assaulting me. Eventually, I was sent to a women's hospital and 2 hours later confirmed that I was not the Virgin Mary. Physically, it didn't affect me, but I've been very wary of going to doctors since. Sounds to me like that doctor thought he was frickin' House or something. But in all fairness, to some degree, I can kind of understand the wariness of some of these things. I ditched my GP after she accused me, an overweight and wearing an empire dress, of being pregnant and making me lay down on the exam table so she could feel my stomach. I didn't even get the dignity of peeing on a stick. She decided the best way to decide whether I was pregnant or not was to knead my stomach and declare it nice and soft. Grossish alert. My grandmother went to the doctor for blood in her stool and told her it was hemorrhoids. She asked him to perform some tests because she didn't believe it was just hemorrhoids. He refused and told her to come back if the H medication didn't work. It didn't, and it turns out she had colon cancer. It was so far along by this point that she passed 6 months after her diagnosis. Maybe some people would disagree, but I think if I told the doctor to give me tests because it would put my mind at ease or something, or it might make you discover something that might be even more wrong with me than we first imagined, then by God, I'm going to make them do it. Age 1. You have nerve damage from spina bifida that affects your bladder. Here, take this medicine and learn how to pee through a straw. Age 12. Oh, the medicine isn't working. Are you sure you're using it correctly? Age 16. Here, try Ditropan again. Age 21. Here, try bladder Botox. Age 22. Oh, hold up, there's something weird about your bladder. You also have a second ureter on your left kidney. Age 23. Yeah, you have a hole in your bladder that's probably congenital. There since birth. Wait 6 months and we'll get you in to fix that up. I've had multiple MRIs since birth, and apparently the second ureter and the hole in the bladder was somehow missed. I'm still waiting for the surgery date. I also want to make it clear that I have no ill thoughts about anyone who missed my diagnosis for so long. Stuff happens, and it's definitely not a reflection on my healthcare system. I'm more annoyed at my own body for being so messed up to begin with. The only person I'm annoyed with is the guy that told me I wasn't trying hard enough, and he's dead now, so I can't even be like, in your face, jerk. Personally, I think that's real cope, to be honest. No, your healthcare system really sucks if through 23 years of, having this checked out and no one really noticed this. I don't know, that's just my opinion. A psychologist I was seeing once gave me schizoaffective disorder, but walked it back to a temporary psychotic episode a few weeks later. Spent those few weeks in a state of shock and disbelief, though. Horrendous pain, vomiting. ER doc says that I have a lot of stool. I told the doctor that he wasn't the first person to tell me that I was full of crap, but that there was something else wrong. Another doctor says the same thing. I am becoming belligerent because of this nonsense and the excruciating pain. Third opinion doctor orders CT. I had gangrene on my appendix and it was hours from rupturing. Midnight emergency surgery. 5 days in the hospital. If I went along with what they had initially said, I would be dead. I went to an ER after driving to 12 feet. I heard something like a crackle and pool water drizzling down my throat through my ear, and immense pain. Upon describing this to the doctor at the ER, he diagnosed it as an ear infection, a 0 to full-blown ear infection, which had nothing to do with the dive, the nose, or the fact that pool water has very distinct taste when it runs down the back of your throat. At my ear specialist, who I saw as soon as possible, I was correctly diagnosed with barotrauma. The effect from the first doctor was unnecessary agony for 24 hours because he apparently didn't get paid enough to listen to anything beyond the symptoms. At least in the end, it was a full recovery. When I was 15, my GP told my mum that the crippling pain below my sternum, the very upper part of my abdomen, was heartburn, and he prescribed antacids, ignoring the fact that this pain would literally have me on the floor in the fetal position crying. Heartburn. So, of course, the medicine doesn't work, and I deal with this pain several times a week for 4 years, until I'm 19 and deployed to Iraq. Thankfully, my NCO wouldn't listen when I had an attack and told him it'd pass. He sent me to our clinic. They draw blood, it's pancreatitis, secondary to gallstones. They removed my gallbladder and it got much better. I still have rare acute pancreatitis that I believe is from the damage of 4 years' worth of stones passing through my duct. That quack. I think the closest thing to any of these stories that I had is when I broke my foot. I went to the school nurse and she was like, it's fine, it's just a bruise. I was like, no, I literally can't walk. I'm going to the hospital. I went to my pediatrician when I was 19 about pains I had been having in my back. They were in a specific location, a bit left of my spine, center height, and would come suddenly, be quite intense, and then go away for a while. It wasn't a new feeling, but they were getting worse. She chalked it up to my anterior pelvic tilt, poor posture, lack of exercise, and prescribed me some workouts to do. It wasn't bad thinking on her part, as I wasn't in great shape at the time, but it definitely felt like she didn't take my symptoms very seriously. Maybe I didn't do a good enough job conveying the intensity. About a year later, I was at my parents' house, made myself a box of Kraft mac and cheese, and wound up in by far the most pain I've ever experienced. It's hard to describe the pain without sounding hyperbolic, but I'll say I was sat in a chair trying not to breathe and thinking about how long I could last before jumping headfirst over the balcony railing into the floor below. I can say with confidence I will never feel more physical pain, which is a strange thought. Fire department came to the house but were afraid to move me, thinking I had pinched a nerve. After a couple of hours in the chair, the pain somewhat suddenly vanished, and I had my dad drive me to the ER. Got to the ER, had an ultrasound, which was awesome, and the docs found that my gallbladder was stuffed with gallstones. Not just a couple, but dozens, and 2 of them were about the size of quarters, which is also about the width of a gallbladder. These 2 stones alone were actually filling my gallbladder side to side. My gallbladder was also completely infected and had been for some time. Lots of WTF faces on the doctors that day. Turns out the stones had been building for years. They estimated that it started in middle school and I had just gotten used to the random pain somehow. Pretty weird looking back on it. Anyway, they ripped that crap right out of me and life's been a lot better since. I was just not diagnosed. Horrendously painful periods from the age of 9. I could barely get out of bed or go to school. They were heavy as well. My doctor, an older man, told me and my mother to suck it up, that it was all part of being a woman. I was depressed and lived like this for 9 years, barely getting out of bed for a week, at least a month, and missing heaps of school. Then I got pregnant at 17, which I now know is a miracle. Had my first ultrasound and my ovaries were covered in endometrial cysts. I tried to give birth naturally, but all the endometriosis and scarring made it impossible, so I had a C-section. After my C-section, the endometriosis held on to my C-section incision, causing severe pain and unfortunately 2 more operations before that was cleared. I lived in severe pain for so long because my doctor thought periods should be painful. They shouldn't. If I had been diagnosed earlier, my body could have been prepared for pregnancy, though D's and C's and other procedures which could have made my pregnancy, birth, and recovery much easier.